Members of the committee, my name is Tom Gehl. I'm representing the Georgia Municipal Association. GMA is opposed to this measure, and I first of all want to say that my longtime friend, Representative Vance Smith, and I've talked about this, and on this issue we've agreed to disagree, and we'll still be friends. HB 302 would prohibit local governments from adopting design standards for residential homes, and put simply, this bill takes the power away from the people, the citizens, to decide the look and feel of our communities. It's a serious threat to home rule and the local citizens' control, but it's a real boon to the home builders. These are the same special interests that support the bill. Citizens, not special interests, should make decisions about the look and feel of the communities that you all represent. This legislation would stop that tough debate that happens city by city, county by county, of what is an appropriate look and feel for those communities. That debate would go away. Citizens would not be allowed to work with their neighbors, their planning commissions, their locally elected officials to protect their investments and their property values and regulate design standards for residential homes. It's a threat to home rule. It's a threat to local citizens' ability to control their communities. Local governments work extensively with their citizens to conduct comprehensive planning. You all have in front of you the comprehensive plans from your communities. These aren't just whimsical plans. These are plans that are done with extensive community input. Your constituents, your citizens, develop these plans, and they are brought forward to govern some of the ways that these communities manage, the way that their appropriate and affordable housing goals are met. Housing is a component of every single comp plan that you all have gotten. If you think that we're not concerned about appropriate and affordable housing at the local government level with extensive citizen input, I would encourage you to look at those. If House Bill 302 were to become law, you might as well throw those community comprehensive plans in the trash as you leave the state capitol. Again, HB 302 silences the people, silences citizens across this state, and empowers home builders to figure out what's appropriate for your communities. Again, citizens, not special interest groups, should make decisions about the look and feel of your communities.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and I will be brief. I'm Todd Edwards. I'm Deputy Legislative Director with the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia. Today I'm not here to argue whether local design standards on homes are a good or a bad thing. In fact, we have these discussions going on around the state. I think it's a legitimate discussion, balancing private property rights, those of home builders, and those of local communities who may want to step up and incorporate some of these standards into their local land use or zoning ordinances. However, we believe that these discussions best take place at the local level, within each city, within each county. They're very carefully deliberative. All sides are brought to the table. Not all communities do this. We have 159 counties. I know of 10 that may be impacted by this bill as far as the design standards on single homes. 30 counties don't have zoning in the state of Georgia. The bottom line is one size doesn't fit all. This may not be for our rural counties. It may not be for you. It may not be for me. It may not be for the majority of people in this room. But I would offer up that the local government level, having these discussions, being able to adopt these without state preemption is not needed, is the best place for this to play out. Georgia is a big, diverse state, different strokes for different counties. Some in the mountains, some down on the coast in metro Atlanta, they like this stuff. It doesn't, we mentioned earlier about the increase in property value. It does just that. And again, I'm concerned if these are prohibited, we do leave a lot of these decisions in the hands of developers and home builders without appropriate community input. Yes, a covenant is a private contract between an owner of a land, putting homeowner covenants on it, and later homeowners associations. But in order to get there, there's subdivision negotiations which go on between the local government and a potential developer. And our ability to have this leverage to incorporate eventually into a covenant is a very significant tool for local governments to have, and I feel that this would take it away. With that, Mr. Chairman, again, home rule. It's a principle in Georgia. Home rule works, and I would urge your consideration of voting no on this bill and letting it continue to work. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Y'all hang on a minute, you got a couple of questions, and then I want the gentleman from Savannah that had to fight Henry County traffic this morning to,
We've got some commissioners from Oconee too if you have questions, because I
Okay.
know a lot of this is aimed at them. We got 2 commissioners here.
okay. Winford, are you one?
Do appreciate the Albany-Doherty comprehensive plan of 2020 and 06. I would have appreciated it more if you had gotten it to me yesterday so that I could be able to read through it, because I'm looking at some of the things that
Bills fly fast around here, so we do the best we can.
we appreciate that. One of the things, though, that does concern me is this, because I'm concerned as communities began to start regulating the people deciding what color that I should paint my house. I'm concerned, do you think that even under current law, does a community have that right? Or
So-
should they have that right?
So Representative Dukes, I think Mayor Chris touched on it. That doesn't add, there's not a cost to that, but as a Georgia Bulldog, I would hate to have somebody paint a house next to me in Florida Gator orange, and I would have a harder time selling my house, I think, if I had neighbors that had polka dot colors. And I think colors are as much a look and feel issue for a community. And you will have communities that don't think color should be regulated at all. I'm guessing that the majority of communities don't have those types of regulations. But some communities think it's important, and I think that decision, as we said earlier, should be left to the citizens in community by community, rather than have all the rules, all the standards be wiped off the books of these cities and counties across the state, because they're developed with citizen input.
I would add to that, and very briefly, Mr. Chairman, this goes well beyond color. If we'll see the list up from lines 13 through lines 25, then going on to a defining zoning in the end. So this is much beyond color. I'm not here to argue whether the community should or should not do that. I'm saying those decisions should take place at the local level. And if that decision is made, there's a sound, reasonable reason behind it. I think the citizens have probably got involved and demanded it. And if the county or city officials get above and beyond what their citizens want, there's a good way to get rid of them through the next election.
Are you aware of the fact that the Attorney General has rendered an opinion that you don't have the authority to tell people what color they can paint their house, even in a historic district?
I'm unaware of that, but again, I would urge your consideration, because this bill goes far beyond colors of houses.
I'm an Omega. My colors are purple and gold.
Yes, sir. That'd be a beautiful house. I would want to live next to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief. I appreciate the testimony we've heard today from home builders who are speaking about the hyper-local economy. But I want to make sure that someone's talking about the principles of a free market economy, and I guess you two are the perfect ones to speak to it. Isn't it true that in a true free market economy, if these aesthetic regulations are truly burdensome, that the housing market will shift away from Athens-Clarke County or Oconee County or Sandy Springs or wherever we're talking about to somewhere else, and that will give those local elected officials the opportunity to then reevaluate whether those regulations are actually serving the best interest of that local, hyper-local economy.
I would agree, but we also have to. I'm sorry. Are we, Mr. Chairman? You want me to answer the question? Okay, thank you. I would argue that that's a good point to be made. I would also argue on the reverse of the free market principles. Those wishing to have these standards would want to move into the area, thus increase property value. So again, it's not for everyone. Some folks may want to go elsewhere and build. Some folks like this, and some of these areas you see with standards are some of the highest sought areas in the state of Georgia. Again, different strokes for different folks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Good job, by the way.
and I'll be very, okay, I will be, can you hear me?
Number 6.
Okay. I'll be very, very brief. I just want to know, for me, Taylor County, City of Butler, right now, we're losing population. People are moving outside the city because they don't have affordable housing. So I just want to know what this bill would do to help me in my district for us helping people stay in Taylor County. Will this bill help in that regard, or will it hurt in that regard? That's all I need, a simple yes or no.
Well, I don't think it's simple, and if you've had a chance to look through the comp plan for, well, I would encourage you to do so, because it's not simple. The way to have that balance of affordability and appropriate housing for each community is going to be different, and that is a decision-making process that has to be run through the citizens of that community. If it's an issue, and you say it is, then they should be developing goals and aspirational ways to get workforce and affordable housing and find that balance at the local level. This bill, all it would do is erase all the rules of every city and county across the state and allow a free-for-all that's decided by home builders, not by the citizens of Taylor County.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll be quick. Just one quick question, and maybe a little bit of a comment. We keep referring to home builders because some of them are in here, but really we're talking about private property owners. They also might be home builders, but private property owners too. So I think that's the one key distinction. And in y'all's testimony, you mentioned the local community with regard to their look and feel. Should that trump private property rights?
So to that point, so this is the Agriculture Committee, so I assume you all have heard of the way that water rights are governed in Georgia. It's a regulated riparian state. And what that means, I know you all probably know this, but what that means is you have a right to use the water that runs across your property as long as it doesn't negatively impact your neighbor, right? That's an analogy for what we're talking about here. When you exercise your property rights and it hurts the property values of your neighbors, you are hurting your neighbor's values. Is that right? I would argue that just like riparian rights, you don't have a right to use all the water and hurt the neighbors downstream. Just like with your own property rights, you don't have the right to do anything you want to where it hurts your neighbor's values. And those decisions are best made on what type of restrictions through a public process at the local level, city by city, county by county.
I would also say that that's a legitimate question. I think any community going into or looking into adopting these standards has to weigh that and has to weigh it carefully. I think Tom brings up a good point, and I think those discussions, again, they should, they will, they do, and will continue to take place, but at the local level, because you're looking out for the private rights of everyone, or the property rights of everyone, and how one decision may negatively impact others. That's good. I just think it should be made at the local level.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate your example. I will say one thing about that example, though, if we take that analogy and apply it to this one example, then where does it stop on the government end? I mean, should the government tell, as an individual, as a private property owner, every single thing I have to do? For instance, when I built my house on my farm, when I had to permit all kinds of different things to include HVAC, I said, what if I want to put a fireplace in every single room in my home, which incidentally would qualify for most historic homes? I couldn't do it. Now, I'm not trying to get off in the weeds here, and I'll just say, with regard to historic homes, you know, at the time those historic homes or buildings were built, I can pretty much guarantee you there were zero codes for any of it. And now they're historic. We look at them and like, wow, that's awesome. Well, haven't we shifted too far to the other end?
Again, you make the point that should government be this involved with everything that goes on in private property rights? Legitimate. The same question could be asked: should state government be involved in dictating to every local city and county and state of Georgia how that they exercise their zoning powers?
When we're talking about freedom of the citizens of Georgia, I think yes in this instance.
I would, yes, sir.
All right, one more, Miss Susan, and then the
Very-
gentleman from Savannah, please.
Very quickly, so many cities in this state have been transformed because of guidelines. It grieves me to oppose all my special friends in here, but this is not right. We just simply don't need this bill.
Chairman, just to respond, I think Representative Holmes hit the nail on the head. And for those of you who are on the House Rural Development Council, you probably heard the drumbeat across the state of the past 2 years of economic development professionals, of chamber executives, of others who said, you know, that intangible that's going to attract the economic development prospects of the future is communities that can brand themselves, that can create a sense of place, that can be the Madison or the Thomasville or the Monticello, and be a different sort of community that attracts millennials, that attracts the workforce of the future, that CEOs will want to live in. Y'all, if this passes, good luck.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.